She said, I don't need a medal. I just need to be here and show people what I can do. She's figured out how to compete without carrying the weight of it.
I don't know if you are anything like me, but I have been seeing a certain thing trending on and on and on the internet, and we need to talk about it. Alysa Liu just set history winning the Olympic gold medal for women's figure skating, the first US athlete to win the gold in 24 years. And that is not even the most incredible thing about her. See, the internet has been going crazy just a tad, and it's not even because of the win, but rather we are all very deeply interested in another component of this story. The story of how Alysa Liu said no, walked away, and retired at 16 years old. She threw away the map that other people had written for her, took 2 years off, never intending to return, just to fight for her spot once again, this time with boundaries.
If I feel like I'm skating too much, I'll back down. If I feel like I'm not skating enough, I'll ramp it up. No one's gonna starve me or tell me what I can and can't eat.
I think that we can all relate to this sentiment, to feel like you are working on something that matters so much to you, but you are driven away, not because you can't do it, but because the environment is crushing you. And that is, my dear friend, what we are here to talk about today. Expectation, pressure. What holds you back from claiming the life that you love, the life that you deserve? Because you and me and you, we know these things. You deserve that life. And man, oh man, did Alysa Liu just write the playbook on it. Here's the thing. It is the most natural thing in the world to want to excel and succeed and to receive the approval of those around you. It is evolutionarily advantageous when the people around you love, support, and approve of you, right? Like, that's the reason why we feel like this in the first place. We feel this inclination to be like, please like me. And it's because we as cavemen decided, hey, if people like me, they'll bring me food, they'll hunt for me, they'll take care of me when I'm sick or injured, you know? It makes sense. I get you, but here's the thing. Believing their approval will save you is where most of us get into trouble. Welcome back to another episode of The Reclaimed Creative, mindset and motivation for everyday creativity. Because me personally, I am of the firm belief that we are all born creative, and we feel most fulfilled when we tap into that natural creativity. Each week I bring you a little video, a little episode, contemplations on how we can like exercise our creative mind a little bit more, feel a little bit more fulfilled. I am your host, Jen Carmiel, and today we are talking about how to hold two things. Great ambition, great dreams, big things, right? The trajectory for success, all you want to achieve, and the you that makes those dreams possible in the first place. Because you cannot abandon yourself in pursuit of what you think will make you happy, because what happens then? You arrive, you get to that goal that you thought would make all the pieces of your world fall into place, just to see that your life is just as messy as before. Fulfillment starts within. And if you, like me, need everyday reminders that joy exists in the small moments, not the big, huge moments, no, small ones, I would love to invite you to join the Small Joys Club, which we'll talk about later in the episode. First, let me tell you a story. So, this is a story of how Alysa Liu, who just won the Olympic gold medal in women's figure skating, was presented with the choice that a lot of us face every single day. Burn out, abandon yourself, in order to reach what feels like an impossible goal, but that which entices you so. Or just quit, walk away forever. If it's too much, you can't handle the hustle, you gotta go. You know, you think it has to be one or the other, right? Sacrifice or no sacrifice. Well, let me just say, that is not how this story goes. Alysa Liu was born to Arthur Liu, who immigrated to the United States from China at 25 years old due to his involvement in the Tiananmen Square protests. So in a way, I suppose you can say that this out-of-the-box thinking, this non-conformity, kind of runs in the family. Arthur had 5 children, Alysa of which being the oldest, and all of them, I found this super interesting. They were all born via surrogacy, which it's such an awesome representation. Like, I love to read about non-traditional life because so often in our day-to-day lives, we think we have to walk the path that other people paved for us. We look around, we see what works for others, and then we do what others do. But life can actually be so much bigger than that which is easily observed. It might be the case that almost everyone around you has the regular experience. And in the case of Arthur Liu, he may have looked around and saw, oh, people just date and then it leads to marriage and then you have kids. But if you happen to be someone like Arthur Liu, you can simply look at your life and decide, this is something that I want. I don't need to follow the traditional path. Rather than following guilt or shame or trying to think about like what other people will think of you, all of this does nothing but slow down your natural decision-making process. And I invite you, my dear friend, to stop caring about what other people think about you. Consider this me handing you a permission slip to do whatever the heck you want. Live your life, the first of its kind. This is the mindset of Arthur, who said he knew he wanted to have kids from a young age, and he was already approaching 40. He didn't want to wait any longer. And so that's what led to the decision for surrogacy. Alysa Liu started figure skating lessons at 5 years old, and it's almost like she displayed this very natural talent, this inclination towards the craft. And because of this natural skill, Arthur began to invest heavily into Alysa Liu's figure skating career. And just to like paint a little bit of a picture for you of how gifted this girl was, how skilled she was, because honestly the concept of the word gifted can sometimes leave me feeling a little because I am a firm believer that anything you're willing to practice, you can do. All of these hours that she put into this craft that led to this skill being built. She became the youngest US champion at the age of 13 back in 2019, the first woman to land a 3 triple axels in a program. I believe that is impressive. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't follow figure skating and I can't pretend that I do. What I'm interested in this story is the mindset that accompanies all of it, and we're gonna get to that. So if you also don't know these words, that's all right. That's what we're here for. Although we can say all of the facts in front of us, it all has like one very big sign, in my opinion, that says bright future ahead. Keep on keeping on the path. But even with such a bright future ahead of her, the expectations of her team, and her family, Alysa Liu made the decision to retire from figure skating at just 16 years old after the Beijing Olympics. Now, what makes this such a significant kind of decision is most people, whenever they have that kind of skill, when they are already winning medals at such a young age, really the only thing that people can think to do in that case is just keep going, like just keep getting those accomplishments. And it would be almost easy to, right? Because you're in this momentum, you're in this inertia to just keep on keeping on. And there's also the expectation that most people in athletic fields like this, if you retire, if you take time off, you know, your body starts to get out of the rhythm of that regular training, makes it so much more difficult to return back to your career. What led to her walking away the first time from figure skating, because as we'll talk about later, she does come back to it. It was actually the pandemic that happened. It was essentially the first like pause button she had in her life since, and that's something that I can kind of relate to as well, because back whenever I was in art school is when the pandemic hit. I think I was a senior in art school working on my thesis and such, and it was the first time I had a Saturday off ever in my life since I was 16, because I was the type that was raised to always be working on something, being productive, you know, building your life, building your future. And so when the pandemic hit, that was the first weekend off I had ever had since I was 16. And Alysa Liu says pretty much the same experience. Since she was 5 years old, she spent every single day training as a figure skater. And when all of the ice rinks closed for the pandemic, she was sort of left with this feeling like, this is what life is like when I'm not skating all the time. And just imagine that for a minute. If you yourself are working every single day of your life and you're just in this rhythm of always doing what other people tell you to do, and suddenly freedom. You are able to do anything you so desire, and like time feels so much slower now. You have no idea. You sort of start to kind of define yourself beyond what you can do, beyond your productivity, beyond the expectations that others have of you and the expectations of that you expect you to be. Everything kind of shifts. I'll read you a little excerpt from an interview she did with The Guardian magazine. Is it a magazine? I don't know, it just says The Guardian. And so she said, that was my first ever break. Once quarantine started, I was like, wow, this is what not skating is like. And I loved it so much. And it wasn't only this concept of renewed time with yourself, but also she realized that she was spending so much time away from family. She said, quote, "My worry was that I'll have never lived with my family. I'm growing up so fast, so young. I knew that if I continued skating, I would never have a chance at home." I really do think that this pandemic provided a really weird reset for a lot of people, almost like recalibrating what is important to you. I'm curious to hear if you have ever had a certain moment in your life whenever it was like a big pause button got hit, and what realizations that you had in turn. What did you realize was important to you and maybe not as important to you as you thought? Let me know in the comments. So after she retired, she initially did not plan on returning. She went out. she lived her life. She attended the UCLA, majoring in psychology, and during this 2-year break, she tried a lot of new things. Things that this intense figure skating training experience prevented her from doing in the first place. She tried a lot of new sports. She tried finding new cafes and just hanging out with friends and living life. And ironically, it was the experience with skiing, one of the sports that she had tried out, that ended up leading her, pun included, pun not included, back to the ice. And I'll read it to you in her own words. She said, "At the very start of this year, I went skiing for the first time, and I hadn't felt that adrenaline rush, I guess, since I'd quit skating. It was so similar to skiing. And so after I skied, I was like, wait, let me get back on the ice and see what that feels like." At this point, I still wasn't planning to return. I just wanted to skate again, and I hadn't stepped on the ice since I last got off for my last show. I just wanted to get back on and see how the skates felt, the whole thing. The first session, I tried the double axel, and I could do it. And I was like, oh. And I think this is something that we can all take away from this kind of story. Oftentimes when you feel very stuck, like you're in this routine of not enjoying your life and just kind of going through the motions, one of the most helpful things for me in my own life at least has been to just stop and try new things. Because something I think we often forget is that the reason why we end up in our field, our career that we end up in, is because we are naturally inclined and we have these natural strengths, and that is what lights us up to go forward into that path. And it's in leaning into these natural inclinations that we have as a person, not necessarily whatever we feel tempted to label ourselves as, like artist, author, figure skater, whatever the reason is that you're putting this label on yourself for. It's the soul underneath, and it's the energy force underneath, all of that leads you to be successful at whatever you're passionate about doing. Like these boxes, these labels, they don't do anything to serve you. Their only purpose is explaining you to others. And while being able to explain yourself to others is useful because, you know, feeling understood is nice, like ultimately at the end of the day, if you're feeling depleted of your energy, depleted of the joy for your craft, something's got to change. Something's just got to give. And that's where you take a step back, and it can feel scary and risky, but it is so necessary. And I think that's what has sort of grabbed everybody's attention for even people like me who do not follow sports in any way. Like this is what has, like this is why we're also fascinated with Alysa Liu's story, because she models for us what I believe we all know in our core what we need to do. Say no more often, implement the boundaries that we need to keep us alive and happy doing what we're doing, to not accept what the world wants to impose on us, what they expect from us, instead to trust our gut reaction when we want to do certain things and things like that. When Alysa Liu first had this thought of returning to skating after her 2-year break, she was initially shot down by the people that she floated this idea to. In an interview, her coach states that they had a 30 to 45 minute conversation about how this is just a really bad idea. You don't just take 2 years off and return to the same caliber that you had once trained for. Alysa, though, was unwavering in her belief that this would work. With each objection, she knew what she felt to be true, that she could carry this home, and she reiterated that. And more than that, because it's hard enough to stand up for something that you want, hear what they're telling you, you can't do it, and to start to believe that yourself, to doubt yourself, it's hard to hold on to your belief in the midst of all of that. But what she went even a step farther, and she implemented her own boundaries. Like, not only am I coming back, but I'm coming back the way I want to. She said, I get to pick my program music. I get to help with the creative process of the program and the choreography. If I feel like I'm skating too much, I'll back down. If I'm not skating enough, I'll ramp it up. No one is going to starve me, tell me what I can and can't eat. And it's these kinds of decisions that make such huge impact for those of us following along who maybe are not as well-versed or maybe don't follow sports as often. We're fascinated and inspired by how she not only took control of her own life, but that she got everything she wanted in doing so. We often tell ourselves, this is just what it takes, deal with it, and we compromise. But what if your ideal lifestyle does not mean giving up ease, relaxation, and joy. And don't get me wrong, like I do know that this kind of mindset does carry with it some privileges. After all, the first question you have to ask in a situation like this is, can I afford to say no? What are the risks associated with saying no? And so it's not always that easy to make a difficult decision like stepping away from something like this. But I will tell you something, my favorite affirmation like that I use in my day-to-day nowadays is this: how relaxed can I be while building my dream life? And if you're familiar with this channel, you'll know that I love calling this building your garden. I really love the metaphor of approaching your life much like gardening. Sometimes weeds grow that you gotta pull out, that you have to say no to. Sometimes people come by and they plant things in your garden. Those are the expectations that others have of you, and you have to rip those out of the ground too and say, you don't belong in my garden. I make my own garden. I plant my garden. Build your garden. How can I invite ease into my life while building that which matters most to me? And if the road ahead feels heavy and impossible, I personally always try to start with the smallest possible steps. So rather than saying I'm quitting my job tomorrow or I'm ending this relationship today, like think of the smallest possible ways that you can make yourself just a little bit more comfortable. That alone helps rebuild a little bit of trust within your nervous system that you might have with yourself. For example, maybe like picking your favorite music to listen to while you're on your lunch break so that you can decompress, take some time for you, or making sure that you always have your favorite kind of drink like Olipop or juice. You find ways to make it work in the smallest possible ways. And if you do need more suggestions, I run this thing called the Small Joys Club. I mail out an art print and a letter every single month with suggestions about how to invite more of these small moments of joy into your life. And if you join the full letter tier, you also get a journal prompt exercise for how to romanticize your life more. I hope that we can all learn something from stories like Alysa Liu. One of my favorite quotes that I've heard floating around from her lately is this:
I don't think anything is gonna be hard. You know, it's like, what is there to lose? Every second you're there, you're gaining something. There's nothing to be lost.